Yo, what is up, YouTube? It's YBP Gang, YBP Nation, YBP Boxing, YBP MMA. I'm making my return to videos. I'm excited. I don't want to, plan anything or make any promises for the future. So I'm just taking a video at a time. But, when Jake Paul makes a fight announcement, I'm going to be here talking about it. Been following his career since the start, since, Ben Askren, Deji, Woodley, both those fights, Anderson Silva. Because I really think he's been, I'm like I said, I'm a fan of spectacle. So when the Tank news came out, I was shocked. I was surprised. And I came here to talk about it. And so it's no different when we get an announcement. Obviously, we heard about Gervonta Tank Davis having a civil issue with, I think, a previous girlfriend of his. I think it came out that he had beat her or assaulted her in some way. So, that placed him in some sort of legal trouble and, therefore canceling his fight or his bout with Jake Paul. So they needed a replacement, and as the story goes, Jake Paul called out, Francis Ngannou, and Ngannou came out publicly. By the way, Ngannou is one of my favorite fighters, so this was kind of out of left field. He comes on and says it's almost disrespectful. I haven't liked the way, obviously I loved Ngannou as a UFC fighter. Post that, after that, I haven't really been a big fan. I feel like, obviously I was cheering for him for the Tyson Fury fight. I'm glad he got that payday. He probably got paid more than a lot of fighters have gotten in their entire career for that one fight. And he was able to go out there, and I thought he arguably won that fight. But ever since then, it's been a bunch of shenanigans, saying he wants to come back to fight John Jones, saying he wants, big money for another fight, And then I forgot, it almost like I've kind of erased that fight from my memory, the Anthony Joshua fight, what was it, like 2-3 rounds? And he just gets sparked out of nowhere after having such a competitive fight with Tyson Fury. Probably got paid some big bucks for that one too. But you look at how we view Tyson Fury as, the top heavyweights in this generation. He kind of failed, I guess. We didn't really get to see the Wilder fight. We never got to see the Fury fight. He never really amounted to, I think, what we wanted him to. Or I think what a lot of people saw him as. He's this big marauder, beautiful puncher, elusive, athletic. He loses to Andy Ruiz. So it's a guy who was kind of underperformed in spots, but he's an undeniable star and an undeniable draw for the country of England. So, a potential clash with Fury is going to be huge. But back to the initial point, Joshua goes out, knocks out Ngannou. I haven't been a fan of how Ngannou's been moving post UFC, but I do respect him trying to make the most money. But I feel like if he accepts the Jake Paul fight, if Jake Paul was serious, which if this Joshua fight actually goes through, that has to be, it's not a good look for Ngannou. You basically publicly ducked Jake Paul to fight, I guess to not fight at all. So you go out there, you talk how you're disrespected and you don't feel like it's a real fight when that easily could have been a big payday. And he goes out and fights someone who you lost to in a what was it, a round 2 knockout loss. So it's not a good look for Ngannou. I don't know how much he even cares about that. I know he's been going through a lot. We talked about, I don't know if I killed my platform and talked about that, but, we had the incident with where he ran over the girl and then his son had died, RIP to Kobe, his late son, and then he had the bout where he was miraculously able to, I don't want to say miraculously, but, given all the circumstances, he was able to go out there and knock out Hernan Ferreira. So he had a lot weighing on his shoulders. I think he's a moral carrying guy. Is that a good way to put it? But I just think you not fighting Jake Paul, it's like, how do you feel disrespected by that? It's an easy payday. You get to go out there and fight in front of millions of people. You get all the eyes on you, all the attention, and you get to prove why you are one of the best fighters of all time of this generation. You want to talk about someone who could, fight a gorilla on his own. He has the attributes of one. He's just as big, just as strong, just as powerful. He hits like a truck. He has the fighting skills of one. Truly generational talent. So I didn't like that, but here we are. We're fighting Anthony Joshua, a guy who has just got knocked out by Daniel Dubois, a guy who, but prior to that had beaten Ngannou, and I think he fought, I'm trying to think who he had fought prior to that. I don't know if it was, he had fought Jermaine Franklin. He knocked out this big like Polish guy. I don't even know. But he's been on and off. He's been someone, I think they've been trying to build the Tyson Fury fight with him. They've been trying to cash him out, trying to get him out the game. We don't really know where he's at mentally. Obviously, he had the two Usyk fights, and you had the big public outburst that he had, post in the post fight, taking the mic and taking the flag, and just weird behavior from Joshua. So, as much as obviously, the betting line's gonna be -1,000 to Anthony Joshua. This is a guy in Jake Paul who had been preparing for a smaller Tank Davis, a guy who probably was just gonna run around the ring, and Jake Paul is probably just gonna try to chase him. And it was going to be one of those circus fights. It's probably going to look like Floyd and Logan Paul. But here we are. We're having Jake Paul fight, a guy who we can't say is in the past his prime, but this is still a real, true boxing threat, a guy who can hit hard, a guy who can win boxing rounds, a guy who was an Olympic silver medalist, I think, or silver bronze medalist. A guy who has the pedigree, he has the power, he has the athleticism, he has the weight, he has the power, he has everything, and he has the stardom. This is something that it's an event that obviously it won't be as big as a Tyson fight. It won't be as big as a Tank Davis fight, but it's going to have global appeal, for a lot of people to watch it. So very gutsy move by Jake Paul. Now, a Jake Paul fight isn't like every other fight. There's probably going to be some stipulations. I'm very interested to hear how those are going to go into place, and how he's going to try to maneuver this in a way to where he can get an advantage. 'Cause I don't really know how. And I don't know how he could, because I think that had to have been part of it. I don't know how far he got into negotiations with Ngannou, but with the Jake Paul fight, there's going to be some shenanigans. There's going to be some weight clause. There's going to be, I'm the A side. There's going to be some built-in stuff. But I feel like a lot of that stuff that comes with the fight, it also came with the opponent. You had an Anderson Silva. You had the caveat that he's an older guy and he's an MMA guy. This one, you can't really, because this is on short notice and because this is a guy who is a natural heavyweight, Jake Paul, naturally to make this fight happen in this short amount of time, he's kind of giving stuff up just as it is. So I don't know how he could possibly do this in a way to where he has an advantage. I think the play here is that, hey, I'm going to come out here. I'm going to give the fans a show. This is a tough opponent. It's a boxer. But people can never say that I didn't go for the biggest and baddest guy. Ngannou didn't want it. I took the guy that knocked him out. And even if Jake Paul goes out there and gets knocked out in round one, which is a very possible outcome, you cannot say that he's scared to fight real guys. And if he goes out there and puts on a show, and maybe wins a round and maybe goes out there, I think the play here is that, hey, let me get whooped. Let me put in my time. I'm going to go out there and get whooped by a real boxer. And maybe, just maybe, I get a shot at, I don't know, like Canelo or Wilder or, I think because he's fighting a real legit boxer, he's able to lose this embarrassingly and not get trolled, because at the end of the day, you can't shit on a guy who was a YouTuber and a Disney star 4 years ago when he's fighting one of the best heavyweights of this generation. You can't troll him for getting knocked out, and if you are, you're a fucking loser. You're just like like you can't really shit on the guy for that. He's put himself in a position to where it's like, it's going to be all respect. I don't expect a lot of trash talk. I don't think Jake Paul's going to come into this fight feeling like he's going to win. Chael Sonnen always talks about how, like, when people are going into a fight, both guys a lot of times don't feel like they can win the fight. I do think Jake Paul will be in a headspace to where he doesn't actually believe he's going to win the fight, but he's going to go out there with the intention of showing that he has something. There's something special about him, and just give a real fight. Kind of do what Ngannou did against Tyson Fury. Show that, I don't expect it to be that close, but, maybe, I don't know, you go 5 rounds, maybe land a couple shots, and then he gets sparked. I don't know. I want to know, when you have such big mismatches like this, I want to know the strategy. Because, honestly, Jake Paul's a big guy. Jake Paul can hit. Joshua's chinny. He just got knocked out by Dubois. And Joshua is definitely past his prime. I'm not presuming to you that Jake Paul has a chance. I'm just saying that maybe he could do something that would at least gain the respect of the boxing fans. I think, honestly, him accepting this fight and getting in the ring with Joshua, I think it should already absolve him of any claims that he's not a real boxer. He got in the ring with one. This is not Tommy Fury, a guy who's, half-assed his boxing career and is only really, here because of his brother. He's really a Love Island star. This is a tried and true boxer. I think everyone respects Anthony Joshua. So if he were to be competitive at all, or even maybe win, there's going to be the people out there who are going to call it rigged. And there's going to be people out there who are like, oh, this is all a fake. It's a Jake Paul fight. But the real people who see what's going on are going to be like, man, this guy, he's special. There's something to him, you know? It's not too many. I mean, how many fights does he have in his professional career? He has like, what, 12? I might be overselling it. I'm just going off the top of my head. I think he might have 10. Maybe 10, 11. And he's fighting Anthony Joshua. That's remarkable. I think it deserves a lot of praise from the box community. I think there's a lot of people who like to troll too much. I think it's too much. I'm already seeing it. Like, people are like, you know, he's gonna get killed, which I don't. That actually might happen. I don't even know that's trolling. That's just the reality of the situation. It's a very tough fight. So I want to know more details though. Is how many rounds is it gonna be? Is it an exhibition? Is he allowed to knock him out? Is there gonna be headgear? I'm so serious. I don't think Jake Paul would do all that, but we're talking about compared to where Anthony Joshua's at. Granted, this is heavyweight boxing, so a relative amateur could go out there, depending on how he approaches the fight, he could go out there and be kind of competitive, like, and maybe even land a shot. It's heavyweight boxing, anything can happen, you know? So it's not like we're having, like, Shakur against an amateur goes different than, a heavyweight versus an amateur, just because of the nature of the divisions and the power. You know, you can catch anybody with anything. You know, I think you put Richard Torres in there with Anthony Joshua, Richard Torres might, I don't know, he might knock him out. You know, that's just the way it is. But I wouldn't say that Richard Torres is a better fighter than him. He just caught him, you know, and that's just the nature of heavyweight. But there's not a guy, like an amateur, that I could see, even if they have crazy good power, I can't see them beating like Shakur or like Davis, Keyshawn Davis or Abdullah Mason. Like, these guys they're technicians. So I'm excited for the event. Clearly, because I came back. I want to make some videos about UFC 322. I'll see what I can do. But this is huge. This is unprecedented. I think this is a fight that a lot of people are going to be more excited for than the Tank fight. I don't know. Now, I do love to talk about the betting side of this. I don't know how you could even... I just think a rule of thumb, you shouldn't be gambling on any fights that involve the name Jake Paul. I just don't know how you could even cap this fight, because from a realistic standpoint, Jake Paul should get knocked down in like 30 seconds. But it's never that simple. It's never, you know, with events like this, I don't think it's going to be like that. I think you could even look at a fight, just think about it. I mean, we're not too far removed from Anthony Joshua carrying Jermaine Franklin to a decision. I wouldn't say carrying him, but he was a little timid in that fight. You know, and then contrast that with how he fought in the Dubois fight. Very aggressive, overly, you know, not very defensive, defensively sound, you know, kind of just going to war. And then, you know, he gets clipped in like, you know, 4 or 5 rounds. So there is something to be said about what kind of Anthony Joshua you get. All in all, it should result in a win, but it's not enough to be capping like, oh, how many rounds are we going to get out of Joshua? How many rounds are we going to... How is Jake Paul going to approach the fight? Is he going to fight like this guy that... There was a guy that fought at Atiba, and, like, he fought... When people talk about, like, oh, how many times... Or it's like... how does it go? It's like, would you rather take $50K guaranteed or survive 5 minutes with Islam Makhachev? When I think about that scenario, or people in the comments, what they typically write is, oh, I could just run around the ring and it's going to be all right. You know, I'll just run around and, you know, just dodge him for a little bit for 15 minutes or 5 minutes or whatever, however the time like this. But the real situation is that at some point, and Atiba just completely killed him. I think he kicked him and the guy just crumpled up, and then he started, you know, eating some punches. It took one, you know, and that's Atiba. That's one of the most powerful middleweights we have in the UFC right now. He's a specimen. But with a guy like Joshua, granted, Jake Paul has to know how to... I think he'll know how to survive, but when your whole approach from the get-go is to survive, like, one, you kind of absolve yourself of any credit, because people are going to look at it like, oh, like, you know, I could do that. I could, you know, run around the ring like Jake Paul did if I was as big as him. You know, and you're not really approaching the fight in a way to win it at all. You're just in there to survive. So is Jake Paul going to do that? Is he going to run around the ring for 15 minutes? And is Joshua going to oblige him? Is he going to let him do that? Are we going to get a William Skull, Canelo Alvarez 2? I could see it, because Joshua too, I just mentioned the Jermaine Franklin fight. He's shown that, and even, a Usyk fight too, a little bit, where he can be a more of a boxing type guy, not more of a marauder and, using his weight and using his physical attributes, more of a patient boxer, almost like a Jared Anderson. He can fight like that also. There's a duality of Anthony Joshua. And I think a lot of people like when they would like in a perfect world for him to use a little bit of both, but he can stray from, being more of a boxer and being more of a puncher at times. So that's the frustrating part with Anthony Joshua. But at the base root of it, I think no matter what happens, it's Anthony Joshua by knockout. But it's a Jake Paul event. So I wonder what Anthony Joshua's going to say about this. I wonder what Jake Paul's going to say about this. And I think at the end of the day, we got to see the fight play out because I gotta see what's going to happen. But I think unless Jake Paul knows something that we don't know, Jake Paul's looking at this fight like, hey, I'm going to go out here. I'm going to get my ass whooped. I'm going to try to win, but hopefully I get the respect of the boxing fans and I get a reward, in the coming in the next year or the next month, an easier fight like a Wilder, I don't think he'll get Canelo, but a bigger fight. Maybe it's an Andrew Tate. I don't know. Maybe it's I think Wilder's the name. I can't lie. I think Wilder's the name. But let's see how he does against Anthony Joshua. I'm excited for the fight. Sorry for my voice. My voice is messed up. I'm a little sick right now, under the weather. But I love it. Can't wait to talk more about this Jake Paul fight. Shout out to Anthony Joshua. I think it's good that they're putting on an event for the fans. And that's all I really got for y'all today, man. Leave a like on me, subscribe. Peace out. Most you know what it is.